You've seen him before. Not in a war zone, not in a courtroom, but in the kitchen, holding grocery bags, fixing the Wi-Fi, nodding politely as the woman he loves disrespects him in his own home. He thinks he's being mature, patient, the kind of man she said she wanted. But what he doesn't know is that he's vanishing, not all at once, but slowly, one small compromise at a time. And the most brutal part, he volunteered for it. He made himself soft, available, safe. Now ask yourself the question no man dares to say out loud. Why do women never seem to want what they say they want? This isn't just confusion, it's design. And Schopenhauer saw it over a century ago, before the dating apps, before the therapy talk, before men forgot what they really are. She said she wanted a kind man, so you became kinder. She said she wanted emotional connection, so you opened up like a diary with no lock. You listened, you adjusted, you gave, and still, she drifted. She pulled away like you were the very thing she needed space from. But what if she wasn't lying? What if she meant every word she said, and yet still walked away? Arthur Schopenhauer didn't see this as betrayal, he saw it as nature's blueprint. Because what she says belongs to culture, but what she desires belongs to evolution. And evolution doesn't care how nice you are. It doesn't reward emotional obedience. It only asks, can you lead? Can you be still when tested? Can you hold your ground when she tries to shake it? This is the story of the modern man's slow erasure, and Schopenhauer's warning that just might bring him back from the edge. You were taught to take her literally. So when she said, I want a man who listens, you spoke more. When she said, I want emotional availability, you exposed your fears, your doubts, your rawest wounds. You thought, if I just give her everything she asked for, she'll finally feel safe and stay. But you were wrong, not because you misunderstood her words, but because you misunderstood her language. Schopenhauer knew something most modern men forgot. Women speak with words, but respond to energy. You gave her emotional transparency, but she felt instability. You gave her devotion, but she felt dependence. You thought she wanted connection, but she was testing for something deeper. Can you feel and still lead? Can you open without collapsing? Can you be vulnerable without becoming weak? This is the mistake men make every day. They confuse sensitivity with strength, availability with power, effort with value. And by doing so, they erase the very polarity that drew her in the first place. There are two women inside every woman. And most men only ever meet the first. The first is her social self, the one who speaks in therapy terms, who says she wants emotional safety, a deep connection, a kind man who listens. This woman is sincere. She believes what she's saying. She truly thinks this version of herself is in control. But there's a second woman. She doesn't speak. She doesn't explain. She doesn't ask. She feels, she pulls, she tests. This is her primal self, the part of her forged through millions of years of evolution. And this self doesn't want what's soft. She wants what's certain. She wants what doesn't flinch. She wants what can't be controlled. The social self watches romantic comedies, reads Instagram quotes, says she's ready for commitment. But her primal self is texting the man who didn't reply for 3 days. And here's the paradox. Both are real. Both exist at the same time. But only one gets to choose who she sleeps with. That's why Schopenhauer called love, especially female love, a deception of nature. Not malicious, not cruel, but a biological illusion. Designed to continue the species. Because her words are trained by society, but her desire is trained by danger, by fire, by pressure. She's not drawn to what's logical, she's drawn to what stirs her nervous system. So when she says, I want a man who listens, she doesn't mean tell me your every thought. She means be the one who hears everything. And when she says, I want emotional vulnerability, she doesn't mean cry in my lap every time you're overwhelmed. She means, can you show me your depth? Without drowning in it. But most men take her literally. They spill themselves, they soften their edges, they become her mirror, her therapist, her emotional support animal. And at first, she thanks him, smiles at his sweetness, says things like, "I've never had a man like you before." But slowly, her body recoils. Not because he's unkind, not because he's unworthy, but because biology has made her a filter, not a reward system. She's not selecting based on niceness. She's selecting based on instinct. And instinct doesn't crave predictability. It craves gravity, presence, power without performance. You did everything right. You showed up, you listened, you remembered the little things. Her favorite flower, the song she hummed once in the car, the pain she carried from her childhood. You became her sanctuary. The man who never said no. The man who would cancel plans to dry her tears. The man who gave and gave and gave until there was nothing left but her. And for a while, it worked. She smiled. She said, "I've never had a man like you before." And you believed you'd finally cracked the code. But then, something shifted. The sparkle in her eyes dimmed. She stopped laughing at your jokes, started pulling away, slowly, subtly, like a tide going out without warning. Until one day she was gone. No big fight, no clear reason, just distance, silence, a love that died without explanation. And you stood there, broken, asking, "What did I do wrong?" But the truth? It wasn't about what you did. It was about who you became. You became the man who gave everything except the one thing she needed most, your spine. Schopenhauer warned us, he saw it clearly, that women governed by instinct are not selecting for kindness. They are not moved by consistency or fairness or devotion. They are moved by polarity, by energy, by the man who remains unshaken, even by her storms. Your devotion, the thing you thought would win her, killed the tension that kept her attracted to you. Why? Because you became too easy to reach, too easy to explain, too easy to own. No fire, no edge, no mystery, just comfort, just yes. Just you orbiting her like a forgotten moon. She didn't leave because you were bad, she left because you were safe. Too safe. And the primal part of her, the part that doesn't care about good intentions, felt nothing. You thought you were loving her deeply, but what you were really doing was slowly becoming invisible. You thought this was love. The late night talks, the deep connection, the soft smiles across candlelit dinners. But Schopenhauer saw something else. He saw a mechanism, a biological illusion dressed up in poetry, perfume, and promises. He wrote, "Love is nature's trick for the propagation of the species." In other words, what you called a soulmate, evolution called a strategy. Because what looks like romance on the surface is often nothing more than biology pulling the strings behind the scenes. Her words said safety, but her instincts chased dominance. Her lips whispered love, but her nervous system scanned for gravity, for a man she couldn't fully predict, fully control, fully possess. That's why when you became emotionally available, when you spilled your heart out, hoping she'd lean closer, she leaned away. Not because she's cold, not because she's evil, but because the illusion broke. The mystery dissolved, and what was once magnetic became explainable. You think you're being punished for loving her, right? But the truth is darker. You gave her everything, and in doing so, you removed the friction her instincts need to stay awake. That friction isn't cruelty, it's polarity, and without it, attraction dies quietly. She didn't leave because you weren't loving. She left because there was no longer anything to pull her in, no edge, no weight, no signal strong enough to compete with her biology. Evolution doesn't reward the man who tries the hardest. It rewards the man who embodies something she can't ignore. You were never supposed to become her everything. You were supposed to remain something she could never quite figure out. Because when she knows exactly how you'll respond, when she can predict every word, every move, every emotion, the mystery is dead, and with it, the desire. And so Schopenhauer said, not with judgment, but with precision. Love is not sacred, it is strategic. And if you forget that, you will keep confusing kindness for magnetism and wondering why the more you give, the faster she fades. She said, "I want you to open up, be honest, be vulnerable." So you did, you opened the floodgates. You shared your doubts, your past, your wounds. You gave her your unfiltered emotions, thinking she'd finally feel close, thinking you were doing the right thing, and instead she drifted. Not with cruelty, but with discomfort. She got quiet, more distant, colder. and eventually she was gone. And now you're left asking, why does it feel like I got punished for being real? Because here's the truth. She wasn't trying to trick you. She didn't lie. She just speaks a language you were never taught to hear. She doesn't feel your words, she feels your energy. You thought vulnerability would bring her closer, but what she actually felt was that you had no structure to hold your own storm. And here's what no one tells you. When you share your pain without being anchored, you don't create intimacy, you create chaos. And chaos on chaos doesn't create connection. It creates panic. It signals that you need her to regulate you. And that kills the polarity. Schopenhauer didn't use the word vulnerability, but he understood the deeper law. A man who bleeds emotionally without restraint becomes unsafe to the feminine instinct. She doesn't want you to hide your soul. She just doesn't want to be your emotional crutch. She's not asking for access to your chaos. She's asking for leadership through it. Vulnerability without grounding isn't strength, it's exposure. And exposure without boundaries makes her feel like she's the one holding you. And she doesn't want to hold you, she wants to feel held. Emotional availability isn't about spilling everything. It's about this: can you feel deeply and still lead? Can you stay rooted while she falls apart? Can you open your heart without collapsing into her arms like a boy looking for a mother? She doesn't want your tears. She wants to feel your depth behind your silence. She wants to see the storm inside you tame, not unleashed. That's why she pulled away. Not because you were too soft, but because you became disorganized in your softness. You reached for her to hold your fire, when what she was really testing for was whether you could contain it yourself. She doesn't want to be your savior. She wants to admire your inner order, your stillness under pressure, your emotional sovereignty, because that's what her body trusts. Not emotional flooding, but composure that feels earned. She's not trying to destroy you, she's trying to feel you. Your weight, your strength, your unshakable presence in the middle of chaos. If you collapse when she's overwhelmed, she may care, she may empathize, but her attraction dies in silence. That's the paradox. You think she's asking for more expression, but what she's really craving is more containment, more power, more trust in your own fire. You wanted to love her right, so you gave more. And when she seemed distant, you gave even more. More reassurance, more effort, more of your time, your soul, your spine. You became her emotional lifeline, her therapist, her servant, her emotional mirror. And somewhere along the way, you stopped being a man and started becoming her shadow. She didn't ask for this, not with words, but with your fear of losing her. You made her the center of your world, and she felt it, not as love, but as weight, as pressure, as burden. You think she's pulling away because you're not doing enough, but what she's really feeling is that she already owns you, and once she owns you, she can't admire you. The man she was drawn to had edges, mystery, direction, a spine that didn't sway just to keep the peace. He didn't explain himself. He didn't try to fix every discomfort with over-apologies. He simply was. Rooted, present, silent in all the right places. But now, you've traded presence for performance, strength for softness, polarity for proximity. And proximity without polarity is emotional death. She doesn't want to orbit a man who chases her approval. She wants to orbit a man who stands still in his center. A mountain, not a servant. Not a boy trying to earn love by being nice. Schopenhauer wrote, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone." That wasn't a call for isolation. It was a warning. Because the moment you shape your identity around her emotions, her moods, her approval, you stop being the man she first respected. You think you're being emotionally intelligent. You think you're being mature, but you're actually becoming forgettable. And here's the paradox. The more available you became, the more invisible you became. She didn't leave you because you weren't good enough. She left because you stopped being magnetic. She couldn't feel your gravity anymore. You didn't lose her love. You lost her respect. And when that respect dies, the attraction dies quietly with it. You became her emotional employee. And no woman, no matter how kind, stays in love with an employee. You believed her. When she said, "I just want a man who's emotionally available," you listened, you softened, you let her see every wound, every hidden place inside you, thinking that love meant transparency. But here's what no one told you. She didn't want access to your soul. She wanted to feel its weight, its discipline, its structure. What she truly wants isn't constant comfort. It's presence, depth, edge. Not the edge that wounds, but the edge that defines, that anchors. She doesn't want to be your purpose. She wants to orbit a man who already has one. And here's the tragedy. Most men think love is earned through submission, through giving, through emotional exposure. But love, in her nervous system, doesn't respond to what is given. It responds to what is felt. And what she wants to feel is your center. Not your pain, not your self-doubt, not your people-pleasing sweetness, but your unchangeable core. She wants to admire you, not manage you. She wants to lean into your gravity, not become your emotional parent. That's what no one says out loud. That the feminine doesn't fall in love with explanation. It falls in love with mystery wrapped in power. You think you're loving her by opening more. She thinks, why do I feel like I'm carrying this man's emotional weight? Because love isn't her highest priority. Survival is. And survival is rooted in instinct. And instinct is drawn to strength. That strength doesn't mean aggression. It means internal order, composure, the kind of presence that says, even if the world burns, I don't. That's the man she surrenders to. The one who doesn't need her to define him, who doesn't orbit, who doesn't explain. He simply is. He listens deeply, but he doesn't collapse to comfort her. He opens his heart, but only because it's already been tamed by fire. What women truly want is a man they can feel at the level beneath logic. A man whose stillness speaks louder than words. A man who doesn't just say, I've got you, but embodies it. Because in the end, she doesn't want to be your emotional savior. She wants to feel your calm leadership when her world feels chaotic. That's emotional attraction. Not constant closeness, not predictable softness, but a steady, rooted gravity she can't help but trust. You gave her everything, your time, your effort, your tenderness, your love. You worked every day to prove you were worthy. And still, she left. Not in rage, not in betrayal, but in silence, like a flame that simply stopped burning. And now you think something is wrong with you, but the truth? It wasn't what you gave, it's what you gave up to give it. Schopenhauer warned us, a man who is not master of himself is not fit to be master of anything, least of all, a woman's heart. You stopped being your own. You bent, you adjusted, you made her your compass, and in doing so, you abandoned your center. But here's what you must understand now. She didn't leave because you weren't enough. She left because you stopped being anchored. You stopped being a mountain and became the mud beneath her feet. And no woman, no matter how kind, can desire what she walks on. So this is your call. Reclaim your sovereignty, not to win her back, but to find the man you lost trying to keep her. You were never meant to orbit. You were meant to lead, to decide, to speak less, to embody more. She doesn't need a man who performs. She needs a man who is. Solid, clear, unapologetically defined. Your worth was never in how much you give. It was in the gravity of your presence, the tension in your silence, the strength in your restraint. You don't need her permission to rise. You need your own conviction. You need a code, a path, a reason to get up in the morning that isn't her. And when you live like that, when you stop asking who you need to be for her and start deciding who you are for yourself, everything changes. Because she doesn't want a man who chases her. She wants a man who's chasing something bigger, a man she can respect, not just love. So stop orbiting, stop performing, stop begging to be chosen. Become the man who doesn't need to be chosen to know his worth. That's the man she will never forget, not because he gave the most, but because he never gave himself away. She didn't leave because you weren't good enough. She left because you stopped being undeniable. And now, maybe for the first time, you see it. The love you tried to earn with effort can only be sustained by presence. So this is your moment. To stop begging, to stop bending, to stop living on your knees for a love that only recognizes strength on its feet. You don't get her back by proving yourself. You get yourself back by remembering who you were before you needed her approval to feel whole. Let this be the end of the man who waited to be chosen. Let this be the beginning of the man who chooses himself. If this spoke to something deep inside you, don't let it die in silence. Like the video, share it with a brother who's been where you are, and subscribe to the channel, because this isn't just content. This is a movement of men who are done living in the shadows, men who are done being erased, not louder, not needier, just more rooted, more centered, more real. Because the world doesn't need more men trying to please, it needs more men who can't be moved.